Hello and welcome. You're watching A News. I'm James Ezimoha. Let's see your headlines. The U.S. charges former Cuban President Raul Castro with murder and conspiracy. Israeli security minister stirs diplomatic outrage over flotilla activists' abuse video. And the WHO weighs Ebola vaccine options as DRC cases rise. Now, Washington is turning up the pressure on Cuba once again, this time through a decades-old case that still carries deep political weight in Miami. The move comes as the Trump administration signals a tougher line on Havana, while also saying it wants a new relationship directly with the Cuban people. Obi Shabander has more.
The Trump administration has officially indicted former Cuban leader Raul Castro for shooting down a plane that killed 4 Americans back in 1996. The planes were operated by a Cuban-American exile group that would often fly into Cuban airspace and around surrounding waters, looking for Cubans who were fleeing the country in droves at the time. The U.S. Justice Department charged the 94-year-old former president of Cuba with murder and a conspiracy to kill American citizens. The announcement was made in a federal district court in Miami to huge fanfare from the Cuban-American community. President Trump told reporters on Wednesday that, quote, "We are freeing up Cuba." Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is of Cuban heritage, released a video in Spanish on Wednesday in a message that was directed to the Cuban people. Rubio blamed the Cuban people's hardships on their communist leadership. It was the first time that Rubio has directly addressed the Cuban population at a time when the Trump administration continues to pile on pressure on Cuban authorities as the country suffers through severe shortages of electricity, fuel, and food. Rubio said that President Trump is ready to establish a new relationship between the United States and Cuba, but that it must be a relationship directly with the Cuban people and not with the Cuban military or its affiliated business conglomerates. I'm Ubi Shabander, A News, Washington.
Now, the Trump administration's latest move against former Cuban leader Raul Castro is drawing different reactions on either side of the Florida Straits. While many in Havana see the indictment as political pressure from Washington, some in Miami's Cuban exile community are calling it a long-awaited moment of accountability.
Cubans have reacted with sharply divided opinions after the United States moved to indict former Cuban President Raul Castro on murder charges, in what Washington says is part of a broader pressure campaign against Cuba's communist leadership. In Havana, local residents dismissed the indictment as politically motivated.
Now they're trying to bring them to justice for an act that was self-defense and took place in a specific context, basically in Cuban territorial waters. And it's a right to self-defense that any nation has. And I believe that fundamentally, what this is specifically seeking to do is to escalate the conflict a bit further at a difficult time for both nations.
Others echoed similar skepticism, saying the move was an attempt to revive old disputes.
Every day they come up with a new excuse, a new argument, a new supposed reason to condemn Cuba, to attack Cuba, and to stir up trouble over something that happened a very long time ago. And now, after so many years, to bring that up again is truly ridiculous. To me, it's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
But among some Cuban migrants in Miami, the decision has been welcomed as a long-awaited step toward change on the island.
This is the best opportunity. If we don't take advantage with our President Trump, Cuba will never be free again.
This is the best opportunity. If we don't take advantage with our President Trump, Cuba will never be free again.
Others, reflecting on their experiences in Cuba, described the government as responsible for decades of decline.
I was born and I grew up in Cuba, and I saw a very prosperous country, a very happy people, and it has been destroyed by the Castros. The Castros have to go. This band of people have to go out of the country, because so Cuba would have the chance to live again and survive and grow again like it was.
The developments come amid rising tensions this year between the administration of President Donald Trump and Cuba's government, as diplomatic friction in the region continues to intensify.
Now, drone incidents linked to the war in Ukraine are increasingly posing a security challenge for countries along NATO's eastern border, with Baltic states facing repeated airspace alerts and interceptions.
The war between Russia and Ukraine is increasingly spilling into NATO airspace, with military drones crossing into countries across the Baltic region. Latvia, Lithuania, Finland and Estonia have all reported drone-related incidents in recent months. In Estonia, a Romanian NATO fighter jet shot down a drone after it crossed into Estonian airspace from Russia on Tuesday. Baltic officials say Russian electronic interference is likely diverting some Ukrainian drones from their intended targets inside Russia. NATO says the alliance responded with a calm, decisive and proportionate reaction.
Ukrainian drones are there not because Ukraine wants to work with drones. They are there because of the full-scale Russian attack against Ukraine having to defend itself. NATO is always prepared for every eventuality. And what happened over the last couple of days again is what we trained and prepared for. And this is a calm, decisive and proportionate response to any threat.
Defense Minister of Poland also warned that the incidents could be exploited by Moscow to fuel propaganda and deepen what officials describe as a hybrid conflict around NATO borders.
A drone was shot down on Estonian territory. The drone was launched by Ukraine. Ukraine certainly needs to, and the military and NATO are also talking about this, to receive targets much more precisely so as not to threaten the security of NATO countries. This could be used for Russian provocations and could be used by the Russian Federation for propaganda, as well as to escalate the conflict and exacerbate the hybrid war.
In Lithuania, authorities issued an air danger warning near the capital Vilnius after reports of a drone entering the country's airspace on Wednesday. Flights and train services were temporarily suspended, while schools moved children into shelters. Latvian officials say the incidents are being accompanied by Russian disinformation campaigns, falsely accusing Baltic countries of helping Ukraine launch attacks against Russia. At the United Nations, Russia accused Ukraine of preparing attacks from Baltic territory.
According to the information we received in Russia, Kyiv has no plans to limit itself to the use of the air corridors provided by the Baltic countries. Drones are also planned for launch from these countries' territories. Zelensky convinced Latvia to agree to the operation, stressing that identifying the exact launch site will be impossible. Drone forces have already been sent to Latvia.
Moscow provided no evidence for the claims. Latvia and Ukraine rejected the accusations, calling them false and politically motivated. Officials across the Baltic region say the incidents have become more frequent as Ukraine expands long-range strikes on Russian ports and energy facilities near the Baltic Sea.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump says America could decide within days whether to take further action against Iran. This comes as negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program appear to be reaching a critical stage.
President Donald Trump says Washington is prepared to move quickly if Iran fails to deliver what he called the right answers in ongoing negotiations over its nuclear program. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, Trump said the United States could wait a few days for a response, if it could prevent more people being killed. But warned action could also come very quickly. He also rejected reports that Washington had offered Iran oil sanctions relief, saying no relief would come before an agreement is signed.
Very right on the borderline, believe me. If we don't get the right answers, it goes very quickly. We're all ready to go. We have to get the right answers. It would have to be a complete 100% good answers. And if we do, we save a lot of time, energy, and lives, most importantly.
During a commencement address at the US Coast Guard Academy, Trump repeated that Iran would not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Trump claimed Iran's Navy and Air Force were largely gone and questioned whether Tehran would sign a deal or face further military action.
You saw that right now in Iran. Everything's gone. Their Navy's gone. Their Air Force is gone. Just about everything. The only question is, do we go and finish it up, or are they going to be signing a document? Let's see what happens. But we're a hot country. We're the hottest country anywhere in the world, with the strongest, most powerful military anywhere in the world, and there's nobody close.
Meanwhile, in Tehran, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said diplomacy and military preparedness remain aligned, adding Iran would negotiate when necessary, but would also be ready to defend its interests with strength.
Should it become necessary, should the interests of the state dictate that we prepare ourselves in the field of diplomacy, of discussion, of negotiation, then we will prepare ourselves, but with strength, the same strength with which the armed forces prepare themselves in defense of the country.
At the same time, an Israeli analyst warned Iran is tightening its grip on the Strait of Hormuz, saying tanker traffic through the key oil choke point is increasingly subject to Iranian oversight and could heighten the risk of wider escalation.
Now, Iran and Pakistan discussed the latest developments in the stalled negotiations during a visit to Tehran by Pakistan's Interior Minister, Mohsen Raza Naqvi. Meanwhile, Iran is commemorating a group of schoolgirls killed at the start of the war in February. Turaj Shiralulu has more.
I am reporting from the ruins of Minab Elementary School in Iran's Hormuzgan province, facing Oman, the United Arab Emirates, and the Strait of Hormuz. There is a program on Thursday to commemorate 168 schoolgirls killed on the first day of the Israel-U.S. war with Iran on 28th of February. Meantime, in capital Tehran, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met with Pakistani Interior Minister Mohsen Reza Naqvi, whose country is mediating a peace agreement between Iran and the U.S. It is the second visit by the Pakistani official in less than a week, as Tehran was awaiting Washington's response to its proposal sent early this week. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai confirmed that the exchange of messages between Iran and the U.S. is continuing, adding that the visit by Pakistan's Interior Minister serves as facilitating the exchange of messages. The visiting Pakistani official met his Iranian counterpart and President Masoud Pezeshkian upon his arrival in Tehran on Wednesday. He is also expected to meet with Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Baqir Ghalibaf, who led the Iranian negotiators in the indirect talks with the U.S. in Islamabad in April. Unconfirmed media reports suggested that Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, will also travel to Tehran in the near future to boost his country's mediation efforts. Turaj Shiralulu, reporting from Minab for A News.
Now let's talk to Daniela Mello, political scientist, joining us from Boston, USA. Good to have you, Daniela. Now, Trump says he is in no hurry for a deal, but at the same time, he has given Iran a short deadline. What do you make of that?
First of all, hello, and thank you for the invitation. Well, the president has had a somewhat volatile way of dealing with the situation, at least rhetorically. We have had many reversals in what the president has said. We have had many extended deadlines. However, it seems clear to me that the president is seeking to negotiate. First and foremost, the negotiated exit for this conflict would be the preference of the administration in the United States. And we can see that clearly in the fact that the United States, in spite of many pressures, some internal, some external, for instance, from its ally Israel, to attack Iran once again, the president seems to be holding back on that and trying to give the diplomatic route a path, room to breathe, room for it to function. Of course, that doesn't mean that there won't be attacks in the future. But as of now, I would say that President Trump is sending very clear signals that negotiations can still be feasible and that an agreement would be preferable to the use of weapons. And that's in part also because domestically the president is very heavily pressured to not just to exit and end the conflict, but also to be able to negotiate and not cause any more casualties, be it in Iran or American casualties.
Mm-hmm. Now, Trump says Netanyahu will do whatever he wants. In practical terms, how much influence does Israel have over U.S. military decisions right now?
Well, as has been amply discussed in the media over the past 2.5 months, Israel played a critical role in persuading the American administration that the time was right to attack Iran, to weaken the regime, to possibly even change the regime, and to be able to accomplish the geostrategic goals that the United States had for the region in terms of denuclearization, and perhaps even pressuring Iran to stop its support for its regional allies and its anti-ballistic missiles. However, over the course of the conflict, the administration has very clearly learned that the picture that was painted by the Israelis early on was too rosy, and that, in fact, the regime didn't capitulate. The regime, in fact, responded by leveraging its control of the Strait of Hormuz, by attacking its neighbors, by destabilizing the global economy. And in fact, we are still, this moment, at a stalemate in which Iran has not yet conceded on the key red lines of the American demands, and the Americans are caught between a rock and a hard place in terms of deciding whether or not to prolong the conflict or to escalate the conflict. But I say this and I recall this because after the phone call from Tuesday between the president and Mr. Netanyahu, many parts of that call was made available. So we know the content, we know it was a long discussion, and we also know that Mr. Netanyahu was pressuring the president to escalate in Iran, and that the president has rejected that call and instead extended, supposedly by days, perhaps longer, the space for Iran to continue to dialogue and negotiate with the United States through the mediators. So what I'm saying here is that at this point, it seems very clear that the Israelis don't have as much influence over the direction of the conflict as they did in the beginning. It also seems very clear that the objectives that Israel wanted to accomplish in Iran are not the same as the objectives that the United States government wanted to accomplish. It's clear that Israel wanted to see a regime change, that it planned for a regime change, and seems to be now frustrated in its inability to continue the attacks to try to bring that outcome about. At the same time, another clue that we have is that in an interview that Mr. Netanyahu gave days ago to the network CBS, he made it clear that the Israeli government needed to find ways to not not be as dependent on the help of on the financial help of the United States. And that has been interpreted around here as a signal that even Mr. Netanyahu understands that the winds are changing and that the support of the United States may not be there long term, and they may need to pursue their own strategic independence.
All right. That was Daniela Mello, political scientist, joining us from Boston, USA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now, tensions are rising between Israel and several European countries after the detention of activists from a Gaza-bound aid flotilla. The images released from Israel's security minister has sparked diplomatic outrage and criticism around the world.
Israel's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has sparked an international diplomatic crisis after publishing footage showing detained international activists being abused by Israeli security forces. The activists were part of the global Sumud flotilla, which departed from Turkey last week carrying humanitarian aid bound for Gaza. In the footage, Ben-Gvir is seen waving an Israeli flag and mocking the activists after their detention.
They came here full of pride, acting like heroes. Look at them now. They are not heroes. They are supporters of terror. I say to Prime Minister Netanyahu, keep them here longer, put them in the terrorists' prisons. This is how they should be treated.
Israeli authorities said around 430 activists from 40 countries were detained and taken to Ashdod port after the interception. Lawyers for the group say several activists were injured during the operation, with 3 briefly hospitalized and others suffering suspected broken ribs and breathing problems. Some detainees are expected to be transferred to Ketziot prison in southern Israel, according to rights group Adalah and flotilla organizers. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the conduct was not in line with Israel's values and ordered the activists deported. Foreign Minister Gideon Sayar accused Ben-Gvir of damaging Israel's international standing. The footage also triggered widespread condemnation around the world. Belgium, France, Spain and the Netherlands summoned Israeli diplomats for explanations, while Greece, Ireland and Italy demanded the immediate release of their citizens. Leaders from the UK, Canada, Germany, Australia and New Zealand also condemned the treatment of activists on board the flotilla. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung described Israel's actions as way out of line and questioned the legality of arrests carried out in international waters. Even U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, a longtime ally of Israel, called Ben-Gvir's behavior despicable and said the minister had betrayed the dignity of his nation. The flotilla was the latest attempt by international activists to break Israel's blockade on Gaza, where aid agencies continue to warn of severe shortages of food, medicine and other essential supplies, despite the ongoing Israel-Hamas ceasefire.
Now, WHO experts say 2 potential Ebola vaccines are being considered for deployment in eastern DRC, but they warn it could take 3 to 9 months to develop as cases continue to rise. Officials say the Bundibugyo strain has caused 139 suspected deaths and about 600 suspected cases, with 51 confirmed in the DRC and 2 in Uganda. The WHO says it likely began months ago after a critical detection gap that slowed confirmation and contact tracing. No approved vaccines or treatments exist for this strain. Now, after the break, we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, Kazakhstan and Kenya are looking to deepen economic ties, with Astana proposing a new trade route linking the Middle Corridor to East Africa. During a state visit to Kazakhstan, Kenyan President William Ruto and President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev discussed transport, trade and investment, signing 10 cooperation agreements. Our correspondent Farza Kalamoziner has more.
Link links with Africa. During the state visit of Kenyan President William Ruto to Astana, President Kasim-Jomart Tokayev proposed connecting the Middle Corridor with East Africa through Kenya's major ports. The plan would link the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route with the ports of Mombasa Port and Port of Lamu, two of East Africa's main logistics hubs. Mombasa alone serves as a key regional gateway connecting trade routes across much of East and Central Africa, including several landlocked countries. For Kazakhstan, this could open new export routes and wider access to African markets. For Kenya, it strengthens its role as a gateway to the East African community, a regional market of around 300 million people. Kazakhstan already handles about 85% of overland cargo moving between China and Europe. Now Astana wants to connect that transit network with Africa's maritime routes while also relying on the broader infrastructure potential of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Trade was high on the agenda. Bilateral trade to Nova exceeded $52 million last year and continues to grow steadily. Kazakhstan is seeking to increase grain exports, while Kenya wants to expand the shipments of tea, coffee and flowers. Officials also discussed the idea of a trade hub in Astana for Kenyan goods. Cargo air routes and the long-term possibility of direct flights between Astana and Nairobi were also discussed as a way to support the business and trade. The visit ended with the signing of 10 cooperation agreements as both sides seek to deepen economic ties between Central Asia and Africa. Farisa Kalimursina, Almaty, A News.
Now, Georgian Parliament Speaker Shavla Papashvili has criticized the British government after the UK eased sanctions on Russia. He said Britain had previously pressured Georgia to stop importing Russian oil products. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
Britain has eased sanctions on Russian oil products this week, citing energy security concerns. But the timing has sparked a sharp political reaction in Georgia. Parliament Speaker Shavla Papashvili says that the British ambassador to Georgia personally lobbied Georgian officials, including members of parliament, to stop importing Russian oil products and to pressure private businesses to follow suit. When Georgian officials raised concerns about rising fuel costs for ordinary citizens, Papashvili claims that the ambassador responded that British citizens were facing the same burden and that Georgia should accept it too. The British side has not publicly responded to those claims. What brought the issue to a head was the UK's announcement on May 20th that it would allow diesel and jet fuel refined from Russian crude in third countries, as well as Russian seaborne liquefied natural gas to enter the country. Prime Minister Keir Starmer defended the move, saying that it was intended to protect British consumers from soaring energy prices driven by the conflict in the Middle East. Britain is not alone. The United States has extended a similar sanctions waiver on Russian seaborne oil, also citing supply disruptions linked to tensions with Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Still, critics in both Britain and Ukraine have accused London of backtracking on commitments to cut off Russian oil revenues that help fund the war. Georgia has maintained economic ties with Russia throughout the conflict, a position long criticized by its Western partners. Papashvili's remarks will be seen by some as a legitimate challenge to Western double standards and by others as an attempt to deflect attention from Georgia's own trade relationship with Moscow. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had a very good phone call with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Speaking to reporters at Andrews Air Force Base, Trump praised Erdogan as a strong leader and an important ally. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I had a very good call with President Erdogan, and pretty standard. We have a very good relationship. Isn't it nice to have relationships with some very tough people? He's a tough guy, and but I have a relationship with him that nobody else does. He's actually done a good job. He's been, you know, I think very much of an ally. Some people would doubt that, but I think he's been a great ally, and his people respect him. His people respect him a lot.
All right, after a short break, we head to the venue of the 13th World Urban Forum, one of the largest international platforms dedicated to sustainable cities and urban development, taking place in Baku, Azerbaijan, with our own Andy Miach.
Hello from the A News studio here at the World Urban Forum venue in Baku. It's day 5 of talks, panels, roundtables and various events dedicated to the global housing situation, urban development and everything that goes with it. One of today's sessions focused on Azerbaijan's first national sustainability framework. Aytan Shukurova reports.
One of the sessions held within the framework of 13th World Urban Forum focused on the Sustainable Practices Standard, Azerbaijan's first national sustainability standard, as the event enters its final days in Baku. According to the information presented during the session, the Sustainable Practices Standard is being developed by the Ebola Social Ecological Center and is considered the country's first national sustainability standard. Its main objective is to bridge the gap between global sustainability goals and local implementation mechanisms. According to the presentation, the standard will assess how sustainability principles are integrated into day-to-day operations. This includes indicators such as energy use, efficient resource management, waste reduction, operational optimization, and the use of local resources.
For us, this is more than a technical framework. It is an attempt to create a new culture of environmental and social responsibility, adapt to our own regional reality. Because sustainability cannot exist only in global reports, international declarations, or conference discussions. It must become visible in everyday discussions in hotels, museums, schools, tourism destinations, public institutions, and urban spaces. Every country has its own environmental challenges, social dynamics, traditions, and development pathways. And this is why local sustainability systems matter. They help translate global principles into practical action that people can truly implement.
Addressing the session via video message, representative of President of Azerbaijan on climate issues, Mukhtar Babayev, linked the initiative to Azerbaijan's broader sustainability and climate agenda. Babayev noted that the successful hosting of COP29 in Baku further reinforced Azerbaijan's commitment to practical climate action and international cooperation. According to him, discussions during COP29 increasingly focused not only on climate targets, but also on implementation, resilience, climate finance, and the integration of sustainability into development policy. He also praised the work of the Ebola Social Ecological Center and its patterns involved in developing the SPS framework, emphasizing the importance of combining international experience with national realities in order to create standards that are both ambitious and practical. The broader context of the discussion was also reflected in global urbanization trends. According to United Nations data cited during the session, around 56% of the world's population currently lives in urban areas, with that figure expected to rise to 68% by 2050. Cities already account for more than 75% of global energy consumption and over 70% of carbon emissions. Aytan Shukurova, Ilkin Mehdiyev, A News.
A News's original World Urban documentary series screened at WUF today, specifically episodes on Azerbaijan's regions of Sheki and Nakhchivan. Here's what that looked like.
At the 13th session of the World Urban Forum in Baku, News presented its original World Urban documentary, offering participants a cinematic look at Azerbaijan's urban heritage and development. Screenings took place in the Urban Cinema Room, where episode dedicated to the region of Sheki was showcased. The film was the only production from Azerbaijan selected by UN Habitat for presentation in the Urban Cinema program. Produced by News, the Shaki documentary presents the city as a living heritage where traditional craftsmanship, architecture and modern development coexist. The film highlights the city's 2,500-year Silk Road history, its reconstruction after the 1772 flood, and its UNESCO-listed historic centre. It also features landmarks such as the Shaki Khan's Palace, the Shaki Fortress, the Khan Mosque, and the Kish Temple, alongside its historic caravanserais. Alongside heritage, the film also outlines future development plans, including $66 million in investments and a new design faculty aimed at sustainable urban growth.
In Azerbaijan, this is completely different. In Azerbaijan, it is to serve its people. It is to create wealth. It is to create a better life to everyone, not just a particular group. And that is why you find, so much this. When you listen to your people and you put your people's needs first, you see what's going on, and the entire country is getting modernized and is preparing for this future, which is already the present, as we know very well. We work with AI intimately, and we've been doing this for the past year. So all this is just incredibly revealing about the Azerbaijani mentality, not just because we throw around the word culture very freely.
A documentary about Nakhchivan was also screened at the Azerbaijan Pavilion. The film, part of the Newsed original series, explores Nakhchivan's medieval architecture and its influence on modern urban development. Filmmaker Fred Nakacha noted that studying regional urban patterns is key to understanding global urbanization trends.
Disrupted rail, energy, and supply.
Existential threats to small island states were the focus of another event here at WUF. With sea levels rising, officials and experts are urging the international community to redesign global aid and urban planning frameworks.
The traditional way of funding, the traditional way of dealing with climate change, city planning, housing, these things doesn't work for small countries like us. There needs to be radical thinking, radical shift from the traditional ways of financing, planning, all these things. So we are here to trying to convince our partners, international community, to look at us differently and help us with the finance that is required to us adapt the climate change, because the climate change is not caused by us. We contribute a fraction of what is happening. So the big emitters cause this problem, but we are in the face of the consequences of it.
What we should take actions is that we really need to mobilize more financing, including the private sector, to support the housing sector. I see the island, they call it small island development states, SEEDS countries. They have a lot of challenges, such as huge climate change issues, including the sea level rising, including the coastal erosion, and including the the very small market, because they are all, most of them are small island countries, and everything's expensive there. The construction cost is high, O&M, operation and maintenance cost is high, more sustainable way. So the tourism would be one good way to grow their economics, but also to really help people to maintain the balance with the nature and then to protect the biodiversity.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, several events here today, several events here at the World Urban Forum today center on the global housing crisis. Experts and country representatives talked on how wars, disasters, and displacement are changing housing needs and how to make recovery processes inclusive and people-centered. Sabina Abubakir has more.
It is about rebuilding lives, of reconstruction. It's designed to be interactive.
Today at the World Urban Forum in Baku, two back-to-back discussions focused on one issue that affects millions across the world: housing. The first dialogue looked at housing in times of crisis, not just after wars, but also after climate disasters and displacement. Speakers from Azerbaijan, Iraq, Palestine, Syria, Ukraine and major international organizations shared one message: recovery is not only about rebuilding walls, it's about rebuilding lives. Azerbaijan's presidential representative Emin Huseynov joined former Iraqi President Barham Salih, UN Habitat Executive Director Anna Claudia Rosbach and other global experts. Representatives from Ukraine and Palestine brought attention to the challenges of rebuilding communities affected by war and displacement. They discussed land rights, financing and community-led reconstruction.
But there are, looking ahead, 60% of the people in IDP camps.
To make the voices of those impacted.
In our regions alone, so far we have about 13,700 people already resettled. Among them 7,000 in Agdam and 3,000 each in Fizuli and Khojavand. But this year alone we will try to resettle around 30,000 more of our citizens to their native homeland. And then, of course, this process will be continued next year as we go on. The second state program is under preparation, and hopefully that will be implemented much more rapidly for obvious reasons that certain necessary basic infrastructure and demining efforts have already been done, and very successfully so, that opening up the way for us to implement these projects more rapidly.
The conversation comes at a time when the global housing challenge continues to grow. Nearly 3 billion people worldwide now lack adequate housing, while more than 300 million people remain without a home. Participants also stressed that displaced communities should not simply receive decisions from above. They said people affected by crisis should help shape recovery from day one.
According to information we already collected, and after the aggression of Israel against Gaza and also in the West Bank, there is 372,000 houses were demolished, were destroyed, and more than 60,000 units are partially damaged and can be repairable. This will need, of course, a huge effort from not only Palestinians, because our resources are very few. This requires an international solidarity, support of the international community and the friends of the Palestinian people, including Azerbaijan, of course, who has the same experience maybe as a result of what happened in Karabakh destruction and their plans to recover.
The second panel widened the conversation even further. Attention shifted from local recovery efforts to the global impact of instability in housing systems. Experts from UN Habitat, UNDP and regional organizations discussed how crises can trigger effects far beyond the countries directly affected. Rising construction costs, pressure on cities, disruptions to housing delivery and growing risks for vulnerable communities were among the main concerns raised. The discussion was not only based on policy and data. Some speakers also spoke from personal experiences, including Lebanon's Minister Claudine Karaki, who reflected on the realities faced by communities that have witnessed war firsthand.
Housing issues, the communities, the poor people they are facing, it's very serious, it's challenging. And recently we have also seen mass evictions that has actually happened in Kathmandu. So the housing issues, it's very critical, and that actually requires immediate attention to address the issues and to rehabilitate.
Speakers also stressed that the impact is being felt across regions from the Middle East to Africa and Asia Pacific, creating long-term challenges for cities and for millions of people trying to access safe and affordable housing. Sabina Abubekir, Zohrab Shirinov, A News.
WOF also featured discussions on the future of major global cities, and Baku among them. Part of the talks focused on the city's Master Plan 2040, aiming to address modern urban challenges while preserving Baku's historic identity. To get some more on that, A News spoke to an official of the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning of the Azerbaijani capital.
The most important of them are making Baku a human-centered city, which is oriented to the comfortable living of its citizens. It's going to be a well-balanced, polycentric city by 2040 with several centers outside of the historical core of the city. The second idea is to keep the balance of the precious architectural monuments of Baku and its cultural uniqueness. And the third idea is to make Baku clear and safe environment from ecological point of view. We're expecting to increase per capita figures of the green areas 3 times by 2040. We're always open to learn from other countries, but the most important thing here, which we are very happy about, is that a lot of countries are also learning from us, from Azerbaijan, because we have not only in Baku, but also on the liberated territories in Karabakh and Eastern Zangezur, the cities and villages built from scratch. And this is a unique opportunity for the world and for us to show the world.
Access to safe drinking water and sanitation in cities became one of the key topics here at the World Urban Forum. Participants of expert discussions spoke of the need to integrate water and hygiene services with housing policies and land rights. For more on that, we turn to Narchechek Jahangirli, who filed this report.
As cities grow faster and climate pressures intensify, the global water crisis is becoming impossible to ignore. At WEF 13, UN agencies and urban experts gather to confront a stark reality. Millions of people in urban areas still live without safe water and sanitation. The session focused on how housing, land rights and wash services must work together to build inclusive and resilient cities ahead of the 2026 UN Water Conference in Abu Dhabi. Speakers highlighted that poor urban communities are the most affected. Many families living in informal settlements face unsafe water, poor sanitation, insecure housing and increasing climate risks. Participants stressed that access to water and sanitation is a basic human right and a key part of living conditions. The discussion called for practical solutions that improve services without forcing people from their homes. Delegates emphasized the need to include wash in slum upgrading, urban planning and land governance policies. One of the key outcomes of the session was the presentation of a roadmap linking WEF 13 to the 2026 UN Water Conference. The roadmap aims to help cities develop climate-resilient wash systems and secure sustainable financing for urban services.
Water scarcity, even though we've got a lot of rain, but it's not relevant because it creates flooding and the rain just moves away. So I think it is important to build more reservoirs that can contain enough water for our communities.
The World Urban Forum in Baku can help us reflect on the need for city residents to have access to water in their homes. Water is a human right. Water is a shared resource belonging to all humanity and to all residents. Local governments must respond to this need through effective policies that address access to water, particularly for vulnerable groups, informal settlements and areas without legal property rights. Even so, cities and governments have an obligation to guarantee this right. We are bringing the voice of local governments to Abu Dhabi and to this year's conference in order to support and strengthen the role of governments in fulfilling this fundamental human right that people rightfully demand. As governments, we carry the responsibility of providing these services to the population every day, and we face these challenges more directly than any other level of administration. That is why the voice of local governments is especially important at the Water Conference and in Abu Dhabi. The aim is for all levels of government, together with urban communities and residents, to work collectively to solve this major problem, which could otherwise become a source of future global conflict.
Development banks, utilities and local experts shared successful examples from cities and called for stronger partnerships and greater political support. The session ended with a clear message. Achieving SDG 6 and building resilient cities will require coordinated action, inclusive planning and investment in the communities most in need. I'm Narçiçek Cahangirli here with Natik Mehmedov, A News.
Well, as the 5th day of the 13th World Urban Forum is wrapping up, join me now in the studio at the venue is A News' Deputy Editor-in-Chief and my dear colleague Orhan Amashraf. Orhan, welcome. Great to have you back here at our special studio for our special broadcast from here at the World Urban Forum. There has been a lot of talks today and the past 4 days, very different topics. We have climate resilience, we have post-conflict reconstruction, there's even some gender talks and so on. With so many different things broached here, how palpable can the results of such a gathering be?
Well, it has been the question from the very beginning. Are we here to talk about a wide range of issues? Are we here actually to produce tangible outcome? I think we need to talk in the first place. To be able to talk, you need to engage with each other. You need to formulate a joint action plan. But this particular WOOF 13, as any other WOOF, it's not about actually producing NCQG-style COP decision. Although WOOF, World Urban Forum, has been widely and rightly and aptly described as COP of urban development in terms of its structure and imminent concomitants and the likelihood of what will happen later, differs from COP, of course. We know that there's a World Urban Agenda from 2013 to 2036. This is a midpoint, and the outcomes emanating from these discussions here cumulatively will be added to the UN General Secretary report, and that report will be of massive consequence. Regarding today's event, yes, indeed, we have been witnessing a number of panel discussions, ministerial debates, stakeholders coming together. I would loosely define the discussions happening here as climate conscious, water sensitive, gender informed, nature based discussions regarding different aspects of urban development. A couple of things specific to note as far as today's discussion is concerned. We are slowly moving, of course, towards the end of this WOOF 13 from a discussion of dealing with the housing crisis at a minimum level to a discussion surrounding a sort of breathable cities, and hence the name of the communique adopted here, Baku call to action regarding breathable cities communique. Basically, the cities that we're talking about, bearing in mind that by 2050, the current urban settlements, which are, according to UN standards, are classified as cities, will need to absorb additional 2 billion population. So basically, with the population rising, and rising inevitably, there's no let-up there, basically, in particular with global south countries are concerned, and with natural and unavoidable climatic events leading to the exacerbation of homelessness problem, we need to address the inhabitability of the city, and that has been the key discussion point today.
And approaches seem to be evolving. There are different steps and concepts planned to tackle this housing crisis we have. Azerbaijan, the host, presented its own first national sustainable planning framework. How has Azerbaijan implemented what we are talking about today, ranging from the post-conflict recovery and development and modernization, and how has Baku presented and shared its experiences with all the thousands of participants here today?
Azerbaijan today presented its sustainable development framework, where the transition from general aspirational talk into result-oriented conversation has been the key centerpiece. Plus, Azerbaijan today presented the master plan of Baku, which seems to be based, and is based, of course, naturally, on the polycentric understanding of how city should evolve. Because Baku, naturally, from the very inception of the evolution of the capital city of Azerbaijan, was largely based in those parts which are classified as environs of old city and its vicinity. Now we're going to have Baku with a couple of centers. So White City, where our TV station is based, is going to be one new center. So around that White City, there'll be new infrastructure. The Ganjlik part is, of course, new center. There'll be other parts as well. So in order to ensure that, bearing in mind that Baku is an entire concentration of nations' political, economic, and in many ways cultural capital, it's vital that it doesn't have one center. This is one of, actually, there are many things to discuss, of course, but I fully understand that the time is quite limited.
Exactly, Orhan, but thank you for your snappy and in-depth analysis as always. And thank you so much for watching. That's all the coverage we have for you today, but tune in tomorrow. We're gonna have more. Bye.